He should be remote. We'll wait.
Nope,
Yep.
I'm not seeing him.
Okay.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg is absent. I'll come back around. Counselor Hassan,
Here.
Counselor Kimmy,
Here.
here. Counselor Tivnon,
Here.
Mayor Beatty,
Here.
Counselor Duggar. Not on
here.
yet. Okay.
Okay, tonight we're going to start with visitor comment period. Then we're going to issue a proclamation, and we're going to move the polis report up to after the city manager's report before we take after the city manager's report before we take consent. And then we'll move on to 2 presentations and 6 public hearings and 2 work sessions. So we have a busy night ahead of us tonight. We will start with tonight's visitor comment period. As a reminder, visitor comment period is an essential part of how we do business. However, in order to help us stay compliant with Oregon's open meeting laws, this is a time for us to listen, not a time for dialogue. If follow-up is needed, the city recorder and the city manager are here to follow up on anything. With that, we will start with Nicole, followed by Chuck, and then Angela. You'll have 3 minutes to address the council when you're ready to go.
Yes. All right. So for the record, I'm Nicole Langley Peralta. I'm one of your librarians and president of SEIU 503, Sublocal 198. I'm here tonight in regards of something that's not on the agenda yet, but the upcoming budget committee meetings. The draft budget for fiscal year 25-26 should be public at the end of the month, and next month the budget committee will begin meeting to review the draft, offer amendments, and ultimately pass a balanced budget to City Council for approval. We've not seen the draft budget, but we have good reason to believe it will propose a layoff. When you examine the drafts presented to you, we urge you to ask questions and think critically about what is being proposed. I have 3 examples. 1, based on publicly available data, as well as data provided to the union by the city, it's not clear that budget cuts are even necessary. From 2020 to 2024, revenues outpaced expenditures by 4%. The city overestimated spending by an annual average of $15.6 million. The ending fund balance routinely exceeded minimum requirements, and the city has had a surplus of $10.7 million for the last 2 years. We're not saying cuts definitely aren't needed, but when we do the math, we don't see it. 2, when you see the draft budget, please pay attention to who is chosen for layoffs. You should expect to see a large percentage of any layoff identified positions at the management level. The state has determined an 11 employees to 1 manager to be a reasonable ratio for most agencies. Of the 13 departments with SEIU represented employees, 11 have more management level staff than represented employees. Based on data provided by the city, there are 276 management level employees to 245 SEIU employees. That is almost a 1-to-1 ratio. There is no department that meets the 11-to-1 or 9% guideline, and the average for the whole city is 364%. 3, the police budget accounts for 54% of the general budget. In 2020, a study of 72 cities by the Vera Institute, only 2 cities passed the 50% mark for police spending. This list includes cities like Las Vegas, New York, and Houston, large cities where you might expect to see a lot of funding allocated to police, and it also includes cities like Burlington, Vermont, one of the safest cities in the nation. None of those 72 cities, including the ones I named, surpassed 36% of their general funds budget. What is the police department spending money on, and what value does that spending bring? As an example, 2 new police officers were brought on last fiscal year with the library as their beat. In my decade of librarianship, I have never witnessed the police resolve an incident in the library, and I have never called the police. Rather, library staff are the ones de-escalating and resolving situations. In fact, best practice in libraries is now to train staff on how to do everything possible before calling the police. I use this as an example not to disparage our police force, but to remind you of your duty to provide oversight. SEIU represented staff are doing the daily work of serving Beavertonians, yet we make an average of 40% less than management level employees. Will we be the ones targeted for layoff? And if so, why? Please think critically, ask questions, inform yourselves, and use your power to deliver a budget that is not only balanced, but equitable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that? All right. Am I on the microphone? Yes. Okay. Hi, my name is Chuck Quilty. I also work in the library, and I'm also a member of SEIU 503, Sublocal 198. I was here in this room making public comments 2 years ago when our library branch had its hours reduced and some of its workers laid off. 2 years later, and here we are, we're talking about layoffs again. First of all, I'm not sure why this is something that we're even considering. We know that the city's revenues are consistently higher than its expenses, and year-end funding balances are staying strong. From 2020 to 2024, the city has overestimated actual future costs by an average of $15.6 million per fiscal year. If we want to make cuts, they should not be made through layoffs and on the backs of the city's workers. The city currently has an average management level to staff ratio of, I had 1.5 or 1 to 5. Sounds like it's even more ridiculous than that. In SEIU represented departments, and I don't recall any manager layoffs happening 2 years ago when represented workers were laid off. Managers in this city make an average of $50,000 more than an average represented employee. If we do insist that we need layoffs, management should be bearing that burden before the represented employees. Police spending has grown 28% since 2020, with general government spending growing by only a quarter of that amount. If we're going to make cuts, maybe we need to look at cutting back on police spending and not on the many other important services that the city should be providing. We live in scary times. Represented workers are on the front lines delivering services and support to our community members' need to survive and to thrive in an increasingly uncertain world. The city needs to think twice before adding to the stress and uncertainty by needlessly cutting workers and services at a time when they're more critical than ever to this community. Please take the time. We heard some numbers from Nicole, and I've got some numbers. There seems to be a lot of confusion and a lot of mixed messages about what the numbers are and what they mean. Please remember to ask questions and consider what you're being told carefully, rather than simply accepting the budget recommendations that you're given. Thank you for your time.
Angela, followed by Mark, and then Elaine.
Hi, I'm Angela Anderson. I am one of the co-owners of Syndicate Wine Bar. Many of you already know who I am and where my business is located. From 2019 to current, we have had outdoor dining. I am going to specifically address Agenda Bill 25050 that you all approved unanimously on April 1st, 2025. In that agenda bill on page 15 and 51, there was an increase in renewals for our outdoor dining permits of 756%, and new permits will be increased by over 2,000%. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but that does affect every one of our small business budgets for outdoor dining that gets used maybe 5 months out of the year. I know as a city, you are trying to build a vibrant community where people live, shop, and dine, but I can tell you that this number, these increases from what we were currently paying of $112 are absolutely ridiculous. They're not part of our budget. We weren't given any warning except for an email on Friday night at 4 o'clock. From what we understand from clarifying emails with city staff today, City Council knew about this over a year ago and voted it in on April 1st. Nobody, including the chamber, told us about this and made us aware of it until this last Friday, our first warm weekend of the year. I implore you to go back and reconsider some of these fee increases, because if not, many of your favorite restaurants, even the ones across the street at the Round, may be taking away their outdoor dining tables, places where you take your families, you walk your dogs and sit, and you push your strollers. Many of these businesses won't be able to afford outdoor dining anymore.
Mark?
Yeah, my name is Mark Foster. I'm a co-owner of the Raindrop Tap House. I'm here to voice my disappointment with the lack of transparent communication regarding the exorbitant increase in the renewal fee for outdoor seating and the disrespectful and cowardly way in which I was notified via a Friday afternoon email dump. I'd like some of these questions answered. Why weren't businesses notified that a resolution was on the table that would affect us in such a way? Why were we informed 10 days after the resolution passed via an email with a broken link? And by broken link, I mean the letter we got from COI said, if you have any questions, click on this link and email us. It was a dead link. It didn't go anywhere. What was the justification for giving us less than 30 days notice to renew? We got this, this notice on Friday the 11th, and we have to have this done before May 1st. Seems a little, pushing it a little bit. And what is the justification for the 756% increase? And what are the fees going to be used for? And what are the costs referred to being recovered when the city does not maintain my structure and it's not taking up paid parking spaces? This fee increase places an undue burden on our businesses and many others, and I ask that the council review and reconsider. Thank you.
Elaine?
All right.
Just
My name's Elaine Foster. I'm also the owner of Raindrop Tap House. I'm also a nurse, so I'm no stranger to having hard conversations around difficult topics where no one's really going to be satisfied with the outcome. And I expect my city officials to be able to do the same. Shame on you for not being willing to have that conversation, for shying away from your responsibility, for knowing about this exorbitant fee increase and notifying no one. Especially those of you who claim to be proponents of small business. The passing of this resolution shows that you are out of touch with the challenges and needs that small businesses face. At Raindrop, we've been fortunate enough to create something greater than the sum of its parts, a real community gathering space. But we're holding it together with our bare hands. We're still recovering from COVID and the car crash that shut us down 2 years ago. This fee increase is crippling. We love Beaverton and its people, and I believed that many of you felt the same. But you can expect that I will be using my voice and my vote to hold accountable those city officials who only pay lip service to the people of Beaverton. Thank you.
Evelyn?
Hi there. For the record, my name is Evelyn Kocher. I'm a resident of El Monica, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the Polis Report. The Polis Report is a resume of an overview of the best policing practices and the changes that this contractor recommended to make towards the policing practices in Beaverton. And there is a lot of heartening information in there, including that Beaverton is among the has a extremely low rate of use of force. But there was a lot more that the report leaves out, and leaves out rather pointedly. Namely that that Polis, the organization that's contracted to write this report, has a strong law enforcement background and often made excuses over the course of the report for preemptively for a lot of information that might come up that might not be flattering towards police. It spent a page talking about how racial disparities in policing and educating police on what they refer to as political matters were not conversations to be left out of the hands of experts, but were needed to be talked about by folks with experience in law enforcement as if this didn't affect the rest of the community. Furthermore, the use of force metrics that were in the report were not disaggregated based on race. And the conversations that were had in the report about creating community within communities of color and building that trust were put upon the community and not upon the police department. We are lucky in Beaverton to have not have as many of the same issues that many of other cities have with their police departments and their communities, but we cannot be Pollyanna-ish and say that these issues do not come back home and do not live here. Regardless of what happens in our communities, these are issues that are cropping up around the country and are issues that we are going to have to continue to face. Why communities of color continue to not feel safe around police, and putting that conversation and putting the onus of that work on them is not fair to them, regardless of how those suspicions and that lack of safety came about. Not disaggregating the use of force rates based on race, not disaggregating them based on mental illness or alcohol or drug inebriation, which is also two factors that were noted upon specifically as requiring larger use of force rates in the report, means that we are not able to identify how often those forces used against those populations, nor how we can better approach use of force against those populations in the future. That's something that we really need to do in order to make sure that as a city we are serving our constituents as best as possible and creating a sense of public safety, not just for some people and what we traditionally think of public safety, but for the entire community, for folks with mental illness, and for people of color here in Beaverton.
Thank you. Okay, tonight I am going to issue a proclamation for Police Memorial Day. Whereas the Congress of the United States of America has designated May 11th through 17th as National Police Week and May 15th of each year to be Police Memorial Day in honor of the federal, state, and municipal officers who have been killed or disabled in the line of duty. And whereas it is known that the police officers face serious danger, and too often those dangers lead to serious injury, and unfortunately some are killed in the line of duty. And whereas the City of Beaverton is proud of our law enforcement officers and wish to recognize their commitment to public safety profession, and whereas the Beaverton Police Department is dedicated to preserving human rights, life, and dignity, whereas the Beaverton Police are committed to the highest professional standards, working in partnership with our community members to improve safety and quality of life. Therefore, I, Lacey Beatty, the mayor of the City of Beaverton, do hereby proclaim May 15th, 2025 as Police Memorial Day in the City of Beaverton. We're issuing this proclamation early because the council is not meeting the week that this proclamation would be sent. So I'd like to invite our police officers up with the City Council to take a photo with us tonight.
Question.
All right, City Manager, report please.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I have 4 announcements this evening. The first, starting with climate action, and I'll wait till we get to that slide. In 2019, as you know, the city adopted its first climate action plan to outline the actions of the city and our local partners so that we could reduce local emissions and prepare for climate change impacts. Well, we're now proceeding with the update of our climate action plan, and you'll hear a little bit more about that this evening. And we anticipate to complete the plan early next year and to elevate our community's values and priorities around this important topic. We are asking the community for input to guide how we address climate change, and so we're encouraging folks to take the Climate Action Plan survey, which is now through Thursday, April 24th. And if you look at the link up above, beavertonoregon.gov/BCAP update, we encourage folks to go to that link and to complete the survey. Thanks to the community volunteers and the nonprofit organization Friends of the Trees, approximately 160 trees will be planted along public paths and streets throughout Beaverton this spring. The Arbor Day Foundation has recognized Beaverton as a Tree City USA for the past 31 years. Beaverton has also received the Tree Growth Award for the past 21 years and actually earned recognition as one of 200 tree cities of the world in 22 countries for more than 6 straight years. If you're interested in signing up for a future tree planting event, please visit friendsoftheTrees.org. We also have a few April events and reminders for you. As you know, the development of the fiscal year budget is underway for 25-26. For those that are interested in details, you can visit beavertonoregon.gov/budget for all the latest. However, there are a number of important meetings that we'd like to let the community know, particularly if you're interested in learning more about budget or would like to participate. The first two are Monday, May 5th and Monday, May 19th. Those are our budget committee meetings. And the last meeting is Tuesday, June 3rd. It's a city council meeting and a public hearing, and that's when a final decision will be made with respect to the budget. We also want to share some healthy reminders about recycling. Sometimes being a good recycler is not about recycling everything, but rather recycling correctly. A lot of us sometimes make some common mistakes. We'd like to encourage folks to learn about those at beavertonoregon.gov/recycling. And then we'll save the best for last. We've got our Bike Beaverton event that is coming up May 4th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., rain or shine, at City Park. And whether you're a seasoned cyclist or just starting out, this is a great event for an afternoon of bicycling fun. There are some great featured activities, including a bike safety rodeo obstacle course, and we will be accompanied by the Beaverton Police Department bike team, a community tabling fair, and a community bike ride brought to you by the city's Bicycle Advisory Committee. And then last, a special shout out to the Beaverton employees as we get ready to celebrate public employees through the Public Service Recognition Week, which is scheduled May 4th through the 10th of this year. This week will celebrate the amazing work of the City of Beaverton employees in all municipalities across the nation, from roads to emergency response to water to development and library. They do so much. So with that, thank you, Beaverton staff, for everything you do. We look forward to celebrating you in May. That concludes my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll have the Polis report now.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, I want to thank you for honoring the proclamation a little bit early this year. I recognize that it's in May, but it means a lot that you guys recognize that. I'm Chief Stacy Jepson, and I'm pleased to come before you tonight to provide an update on the Polis Solutions report. It's hard to believe it's been just a little over a year ago that Dr. Jonathan Winder and Denise Rodriguez were here to present their final report regarding the comprehensive analysis of the Beaverton Police Department's use of force policies and practices. As you may remember, that report provided us, the Beaverton Police Department, with 59 different recommendations. Tonight, Deputy Chief Alan Julfs is going to discuss with you a brief overview of the original project and the work that we've done over the past 12 months related to these recommendations. I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you. Good evening, Council, Mayor. We can go to the next slide, please. I'm Deputy Chief Alan Julfs. I started working on the Polis project in the mid part of 2022. The RFP committee met several times, and they were unanimous in their selection of Polis Solutions Incorporated to do the review of BPD's use of force data. That happened in late 2022. During most of the year of 2023, Polis worked with BPD and the city staff to gather data. They also met with several community members in some community forums during that period of time. In early 2024, Polis issued its final report and came before this council in April of 2024 to deliver that report and their findings. Next slide, please. So some of the highlights from that Polis report: Beaverton, the city of, and BPD are exceptionally well positioned to assume their shared responsibility in maximizing trust and minimizing force used by police. BPD officers feel trusted and appreciated by the community at large. BPD's use of force rate is 0.17%, which is well below the national average of 1 to 3% of all contacts made by the police force. And BPD has a low number of legal claims related to use of force against it. So Kind of summarizing this data, when it comes to use of force, BPD is extremely judicious. These statistics are reflective of a community that respects their police force and a police force that respects its community. These numbers are also reflective of a strong internal culture at BPD of training and accountability. Next slide, please. The report identified several opportunities for growth for our department. BPD policies need to be more defensible regarding litigation and liability. One of the things that Polis pointed out was that poorly performing agencies often have the strongest written policies because their officers' actions are regularly challenged in court. Thankfully, on the good side, we are not in court often over our policies or our uses of force. BPD can better utilize data to drive patrol response to crime. BPD, like many agencies, is very good at collecting data. However, we are not as good at analyzing and utilizing that data to drive our day-to-day activities. Some of the examples of our how we collect data are crime stats, our CAD statistics, our body-worn cameras are collecting thousands of terabytes of data every day and every month. BPD needs to modernize some of our use of force tools. This is especially true of our tasers, our optics for our pistols, and an upgrade to our rifle and less lethal programs. BPD needs to increase grant writing capability to seek alternative funding sources. Polis points out that there are millions of dollars of grants traditionally available, but BPD lacks the administrative capacity to research, apply, and ultimately win these grants. These grants are obviously in a certain state of flux with the federal government right now, so it may not matter. And BPD needs a clear and comprehensive community engagement strategy. This is something that since Chief Jepson's arrival, we've been working on diligently to revamp our overall community engagement strategy. Next slide, please. So the recommendations themselves, as Chief Jepson already mentioned, there were 59 individual recommendations separated out in 9 categories. And the categories are next slide, please. Of those categories and those recommendations are in our command team spent time reviewing all of those for viability and implementation and what it would take. We delineated them into green, yellow, and red categories, which I will describe the categories here in just a second. Next slide, please. Our green category represents recommendations that are easily implemented. They're currently in the works or have already been accomplished. There were certain things that Polis identified that we were already on top of and we were happy to push forward with. Currently, this slide says 19 recommendations are in the green after a recent push of some policy updates that went out this week. We actually added 15 to that, so we're at 34 recommendations that are in the green out of the 59 of total. Next slide. In the yellow represents recommendations that are in process, in discussion, need more work, or are dependent on forces like budget. Currently, this slide says 39. There are actually now 24 that are in the yellow phase, which is quite an improvement. Next slide. And then in the red, these represent recommendations that are not workable. They have unrealistic goals or are not the responsibility of BPD. Only one recommendation was in the red, and that had to do with us restarting a Police Activities League club. Next slide, please. Some notable constraints on our efforts to implement: staff time to review and potentially rewrite policies. As this process was kicking off, our policy manager retired. Good for her. And our new policy manager that we put in place was actually put on leave last fall. So we've had some difficulty. We've been doing it somewhat ad hoc to move through these policies. Policies often require discussions, negotiation with our labor body, and that just simply takes time. Back and forths of emails and drafts and labor attorneys' involvement. It's a long process. We need staff time to analyze data and drive patrol activities. Again, we have massive amounts of data and very little analytical capability for it. And then budget constraints to modernize and advance department-wide training and equipment. I don't need to tell this body anything about budget constraints. You guys understand that. I will use two examples just to kind of give you an idea. Our current TASER platform we've been carrying for probably over 10 years. We need to upgrade that. The cost per unit to upgrade a current TASER platform is triple what it was when we purchased these. So it's just it's just inflationary pressures. They also mentioned, Polis also mentioned our Milo range simulation trainer that we used to have. We purchased it 15 plus years ago. That unit starts at about $16,000 and goes up from there depending on your features. So it's expensive to train and upgrade equipment for the police department. Next slide, please. Some of the opportunities that Polis identified and that we've identified using the Polis report, new connections with various cultural groups. In the last year alone, we've engaged numerous culturally specific groups. Just a few to mention: the Afghan community, as well as Mercy Connections, which is a West African immigrant and refugee community, and the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland. It's allowed us to have internal discussions at all organizational levels about policy, training, and equipment. Our boots on the ground people offering suggestions and offering solutions to larger scale department level issues. There's renewed pride in BPD and the culture that exists within our department. I'll be honest, coming out of COVID, coming out of national conversations about policing, it felt really good personally for me to hear an outside entity say that we were doing a good job and that we were on a positive track. That was important. And continued redefining of community engagement at all levels of our organization, from our patrol officers on the street, engaging the community, to command level engagement. And with that, I will thank you for your time and open it up to any clarifying questions that you may have.
Questions from the council? Councilor Tivnon.
Thank you for that. Just one question came to mind, and it was really great to hear how many of the recommendations have been adopted, implemented, and the ones that are in progress. I was just curious to hear a little bit more about the PAL Club and what's the deal with that one?
Well, as we identified it, the PAL Club was a Police Activities League. It's a national organization, and it seemed to us that that's more driven by that national organization towards us and us engaging that, but it's not necessarily our job to start it or implement it, that it's actually that national organization's job to do that.
It's a nonprofit organization that would, resource wise, it would be a constraint in addition to just being willing to participate. I think it would be a constraint.
As I often do in this role, having served longer than most people around, Police Activities League did exist in the city of Beaverton, and it was almost completely funded out of the police budget. And when we ran the analysis of the cost between staff, the building, all of the fees, it was incredibly expensive per child, almost 4x what it would be to do something at THPRD. And so they wound that down, and it also existed in the building that's now the police department. And so they moved it temporarily to Conestoga Rec Center, I believe. No, Garden Home Rec Center. But they couldn't, as a nonprofit, raise their own revenue to survive without city funding. So it was a major discussion amongst the council about 6 years ago. Councilor Edwards?
Yes, thank you for the report. It's great to see that we are progressing and a lot of them are in green. Just a question I had it in my back of my mind for a while. Since the new year, new administration coming in, and when you're engaging with different culture, ethnic groups, have you seen decline in like domestic violence reports or anything like that compared to other years coming this year? Because my assumption is that they'll be afraid to call. That would be my question.
You want to take that one?
I don't know that I would feel comfortable answering that without going back and getting some actual data to give you an accurate picture of it. Oftentimes, I think if we're engaging in that arena, that we're educating, and that actually may drive up calls for domestic violence in the way of we're educating people that this is a resource to them and this is the process, but without looking,
Right.
and I'm happy to do that and get back to you.
Yes, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
The police chief also recently worked with the Mexican consulate around this issue. When he came in and met with me, he said one of the number one concerns with the Trump administration was that women were going to be afraid to contact the police in the event of domestic violence. So the police chief and the command team worked directly with them to create to basically source an officer to them as a trusted source, so that way they could tell the members of the community this officer is a trusted person to call. So they identified this because of their previous experience with the Trump administration and watching this happen. So we have started working with particular communities that have reached out to us and asked for that, and the chief is a little bit modest. I'm going to give her that one. Councillor Hassan.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and just for all the officers here, thank you for all the work you do to keep our community safe. Not a question, more a comment. Just the data one. I'm a bit of a data gal. I liked what Councillor Kimmy asked in terms of are we seeing a decrease, because I wonder a lot of our communities and folks are really scared to go outside or to make these phone calls. But just if I could dream with you, like, as we're looking at recommendations when budgets and things allow, like how we're using data to identify hotspots in neighborhoods where we need to have more social services and support. I think, my dream is that you guys come to us and say, we're seeing it in these pockets and how can we help? And then we bring in the right social services organizations to provide the right support, because I think that's really the connection between public safety and then kind of just being able to make sure that folks in our community can thrive. So I know it's not going to happen today or right away, but I think that's just something, if I could plug that for you all to think about in the future. I feel like I know that most of you all know where the challenges are and how do we come together and provide more holistic resources and support.
I love the point of view because you're spot on. I mean, a lot of what we do is reactive. And your approach and what you're talking about is going into a more preventative mode, educating ourselves of how we get places where we're seeing problems and actually preventing them before they continue to grow bigger. And as you don't want to hear very resource intensive, just the analytics alone, we currently have like one crime analyst. So all the things that I love hearing you talk about, I concur with.
I'll just wrap us up this evening by saying thank you for the update on the report. What I'm going to be looking for kind of coming out of the report into budget season is a look at training. I don't think it's shocking to anyone that's listened to me over the last 12 years in the budget that I think for our police department, we spend not enough on training. As the person that has to stand in front of the media when something goes wrong, I want to feel very confident that our police department is adequately trained because we know that is the best way to prevent things from happening. And I drive on my own experience as a military veteran that training is the quintessential part when your brain in high-risk situations. You go back to that. And we have cut training in past years, and I think it is to the detriment of our future community every time we do that. So that's what I'm going to be looking at, particularly when we spend so much time in this report talking about training. So I would be interested in our training numbers versus Bend and Hillsborough. I think Bend is a very comparable analysis for us because they're similar sized, similar social demographics, special districts. And so when we're talking about spending, looking to them is a really important place. We also heard a lot tonight, just as a precursor to future conversations we're going to be having as well, is the police department vis-a-vis the general fund. Really understanding, because we don't have fire, we don't have parks, and most of the city is not in the water. Our general fund looks incredibly different. So I'd be like to look at our size of police department versus Hillsborough and Bend, so we can get a full understanding of what we're spending on training, what we're spending on officers, so we can come out the other end, so we can have the important conversation we need to have detailed around the budget. So thank you for spending time with us today. I look forward to continue this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Council President, consent, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on tonight's motion? Please.
So I want to call attention to a few items in the consent agenda. One of the most common topics that I heard about running for office and being in this role is street and transportation safety. And so there are several topics here that address some of our higher need streets that might fly under the radar if we don't call it out here. So this includes planning work for Allen Boulevard improvements, some pedestrian construction improvements along TV Highway, photo speed cameras on Canyon Road, and neighborhood traffic calming projects on Main, 22nd, and Ridgert. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done still across the full city. But these are some pretty major steps that we're taking. They're included in the consent agenda, so people might not notice them because we're not talking about them right now. So city staff are doing a great job with this. Community members that have put in work with the traffic calming advocacy has been really helpful too. So we're making good progress. It takes time.
Okay. We call the roll.
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Deere?
Yes.
Tibnon?
Yes.
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
And Hart Mayor Prigg is absent, so it's 6-1.
Thank you. We're on to Agenda Bill 25068, the 2024 Library Advisory Report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kim Carroll. I'm the Library Director, and I'm here with Kathy Wozniak and Kathleen Perry. Kathy Wozniak is our Library Advisory Board Chair, and she's here to give our presentation tonight.
Yes, as Kim mentioned, I'm Kathy Wozniak, and I am here on behalf of the Library Advisory Board to give you our annual report. So next slide, please. We are currently a board of 5 Beaverton residents, and we're unique from the other boards for Beaverton in the regard that it's required by a state statute that all libraries have a Library Advisory Board, and we meet the second Wednesday of each month. Slide, please. There's many activities that we do at our board meetings. Just to highlight a few, we kind of see ourselves as ambassadors of a sort between the community and the library to spread the word about the wide range of materials and services that our libraries provide. I'm always talking to neighbors, friends, educators about just the plethora of programming materials that are available to members of our community at the library. And it's really exciting to see people get excited about the things that we have that are available to everyone in our community. Next slide, please. And here's just kind of a snapshot of 2024. I wanted to highlight just a couple things on here. The makerspace at the library is incredibly popular. It's a place where anybody can come and use things like sewing machines and the 3D printer that they have. There's knitting supplies, crocheting supplies, amazing things. And the great thing, too, is that there's library staff there that have been trained to be able to help anyone who comes in to work on a project that they might have, different sorts of things. So it's not like you come in and you're completely overwhelmed. There's someone there to help you with the different things. Also, I'm always inspired by the number of programs that the library provides. As you can see, there are over 2,000 programs for the year 2024, and over 46,000 participants came and attended programs for the library. So amazing. Next slide, please. One Book, One Beaverton is a program that's been going on for the first year, and it poses the questions, what if all of Beaverton read the same book? This year's book was The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson, and in January and February there are a number of events, and then the author came and spoke in February at the Reeser, and that was an amazing event for, it was kind of sold out, and we can't really say it was sold out because there were free tickets, but it was a full crowd, so that was wonderful. Next slide, please. The library partners with a number of other organizations in the community. Just to highlight a few, there's Greater Good Northwest, and there's outreach workers at the library Monday through Saturday. They give patrons referrals for a wide variety of needs. We also have a subcommittee that meets with the Friends of the Beaverton City Library. They've pledged $100,000 to support the library through their book corner store, their online sales, and then they have spring and fall library media sales. And just a little plug for them, they have their spring media sale is coming up next week, April 23rd through the 27th. If you want to go, I'm always there every year. There's no items in the past that have been over $4, so it's a really fabulous place if you're a book junkie like myself. And also the Beaverton School District has been a great partner as well. The library's been doing student library cards. Nights at the library is a really neat opportunity for families to come in and learn about the various services that the library provides. And then there's the Kindergarten Roundup, which is a neat thing for giving free books to children who are entering kindergarten. Next slide, please. This year, one of the things that we do is we review when the library updates their policies. And this year, the meeting room policy was updated. And this new policy allows patrons to reserve meeting rooms online and directly with the library rather than going through the city as used to be done. And people can reserve the meeting rooms up to 3 months in advance at no cost to them, which is a wonderful opportunity for people in Beaverton. Next slide, please. And we wanted to kind of tie the things that the Beaverton Library is doing with some of the council priorities. So in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, there are so many programs, materials, and updated bilingual signage throughout the library to help members of our community feel a sense of belonging, to build community with people who are coming into the library through shared language at story times and conversation clubs, for families to bring home materials to their family to share with them in a variety of world languages, as well as partnering with Mission Citizen and SOAR for citizenship classes. And there was also a naturalization ceremony that was hosted this year at the library. Next slide, please. In terms of the community and organizational well-being, priority that the council has, that's a picture of our Teen Library Council. And they're an exciting group of young folks who host events and contests for younger children and other teens at the library. So it's really fun. We have a representative who comes to our meeting and kind of tells us about the things that they're up to. So it's exciting to see them. Another really popular program has been the Age Cafe and the Deaf Cafe. There was an end-of-life resource fair that the library hosted in October that got a lot of really positive feedback from members of the community in terms of just, there's so much that people need to prepare for with end of life, that I think it really helped a lot of people just to have some resources. And another one that I wanted to highlight that's up there is the digital navigator. We also get to look through the comment cards that the library receives each month, and we have gotten so many positive comments from patrons about the digital navigator, and that is people who come into the library. I think there's 2 staff members who come in, and people might bring a cell phone or a laptop or something, and they help them navigate those devices. Oftentimes it's older people who might have a cell phone but not really have much knowledge in terms of how to use it. So people are constantly raving about the fabulous job that people do and how much help it's been to them to try to learn about these new devices that they have. Next slide, please. In terms of natural resources, the things that the library has are mainly about reusing and reducing. So the makerspace, which is the design and make, so shortened to DAM, is a room where people can come in and instead of maybe purchasing a sewing machine that you might only use once or twice and then, not just having it around your house, you can go in and use a sewing machine, like I was saying, 3D printers, various other things there that are at the library, and it's fun to see. We get to see some of the pictures of kids coming in and creating things that they might not be able to make at home. Also, the Library of Things. I know personally I use the Library of Things quite a bit. Fabulous board games, puzzles, musical instruments. There's a food dehydrator. There's mobile hotspots. It's amazing. I will talk to different people, friends of mine or neighbors who, when we're talking about different things, I'm like, oh, did you know you can borrow that from the library before you buy it so that you can see if it's something that you'd actually use and try out. And it's amazing too, because instead of I don't need a food dehydrator every day of the year, but I can go and borrow it and then take it back and someone else can use it. And so it's a fabulous way to help with waste in the community, as well as swaps. The library hosts several swapping events. One of my favorites is in the fall, in October. There's a costume swap. So when your child might grow out of that Winnie the Pooh costume, as I know mine did, bring it in and other people can come and you don't have, it's a free event where everyone can come in and get new Halloween costumes for their children. So wonderful opportunities there. Next slide, please. In terms of financial recovery, we've been learning a lot this year about the process that WCCLS is going through in terms of trying to plan for the levy for 2020, that's going to be on the 2025 ballot, in terms of community surveys, calculating the new funding formula. So it's been a great learning process, I think, for all of us on the board to be learning about these things and being able to become educated about how the levy will work once things are all decided, so that we can then educate others. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, we're excited to continue to spread the word about the amazing work that's being done by library staff, reviewing any updated new policies, and continuing to learn about how the levy will end up coming together for the November ballot. Slide, please. So I wanted to thank you all for your time tonight, for letting us come and share with you about the amazing things that the library does for our community. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation. The Beatties are heavily utilizers of the library with our young children. We checked out 6 Paw Patrol movies this weekend to drive to Bend, because our minivan has a DVD player and we do not have a DVD player in our house, so that was welcome. I did want to share with you, when I traveled to DC 2 weeks ago to talk to the Department of Transportation about the Loop, one of the things that I talked about was our library and our Library of Things in the makerspace. And of all the things things that I said to them about transportation. They kept coming back and asking about that. They were super intrigued, and they're like, but your library rents things that aren't books to people.
Free of charge.
Free of charge. So they were had never heard of such a thing in the new Department of Transportation. So as we are changing our arguments in the federal funding, or in the federal world with funding, looking differently in how we have to approach arguments, the way that we talk about transportation is the library, our loop in the library, and our upcoming affordable senior housing project as the anchor, and putting seniors in the heart of our community with easy access to the library and the farmers market. So thanks for making my life a little bit easier last week. Councilor Tivnon.
I also just want to give a shout out to the study cubes. I've used them 3 times in the last few months for something that I've got going on outside council in the business world, where I just needed a quiet space to sit and think and strategize, and the house wasn't going to do, a coffee shop wasn't going to do. You can rent them for 2 hours at a time, and it was just a really good, quiet space in such a thriving, bustling environment. And of course, getting some books on the way out the door, mostly around strategy and business, the boring section of the library. But I also saw a lot of other people utilizing the study cubes, small business owners, accountants, folks that were helping people with wills. Now, there's no wall that goes all the way to the ceiling, so sometimes words drift over. But it was just it feels like a professional environment that people can utilize for free to have conversations and get stuff done. So I wanted to throw that up on the board too.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us this evening, and for the public trying to track down Councilor Tivnon, she holds court at the Beaverton Library in the study club on the 2nd floor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, City Attorney, you ready? It's our time of the agenda. All right, tonight we are holding a public hearing regarding Agenda Bill 25069 and 25070, which involve applicant numbers LU 32024-01034, ANX 2024-01031, CPM 32024-01032, and ZMAX 12025-0089. If approved, these applications would annex property to the city assigned the residential mixed C zoning of the zoning map, and assign the lower density neighborhood land use designation on the comprehensive plan map for a parcel of land on Southwest Walker Road. I now call to order the public hearing. Before we move into the substance of the hearing, I will ask the city attorney to cover some preliminary legal matters.
Thank you, Mayor. The hearing will proceed as follows. After the preliminary legal matters, city staff will make a presentation. Then members of the public will have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes each. Finally, there will be time for response or rebuttal to the public testimony by staff. Council members may ask questions of staff, applicants, or anyone else who testifies this evening. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. For those attending in person, please fill out the yellow comment card at the back of the room and bring it up to the city recorder at the end. Once the card is filled out, your name will be called. If you've joined the meeting online, let the city recorder know you wish to speak by clicking on the raise hand feature. When you speak, please give your name and city of residence for the record. Now I'll cover the preliminary legal matters. The applicant has the burden of proving that the applications are consistent with the Beaverton Development Code, Comprehensive Plan, and the applicable Beaverton Code provisions. The criteria that must be addressed in this hearing are Beaverton Code Section 9.09, Beaverton Development Code Chapter 40.97.15.3.c, Beaverton Comprehensive Plan Sections 1.3, 1.4.3, and 1.5.2, and the statewide planning goal 10, housing. Any testimony that speakers present must be directed at these criteria or at some other criteria that the speaker believes should apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to allow the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. In addition, Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Only those who submit written comments or give oral testimony will have standing to appeal this decision. Now, do any council members wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias?
No.
Let the record show there is none. Do any council members wish to report any site visits or ex parte contacts? Let the record show that there are none. Does any member of the audience wish to question the impartiality or ex parte disclosures of a council member, of which there were none, so there cannot be a challenge? And then, does anyone wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the council to hear this matter? Let the record show there are none. That concludes the legal matters.
Wow, Megan, we really cleared this room out. Let's proceed with the staff presentation.
All right, I'm going to share my screen.
All right, there you go.
Okay, hopefully you are able to see the title slide for, nope, not yet. Share, there it goes. Hopefully you're now able to see the title slide for the first presentation. Good evening, Mayor Beatty and City Council members. I'm Lauren Russell, an Associate Planner with the Community Development Department. The proposal before you tonight is the annexation and annexation-related comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments associated with the 12870 Southwest Walker Road annexation project. Tonight, we will be asking Council to decide on two items. One, does Council support annexing the subject property into the city? And two, does Council support applying the proposed Beaverton land use designation and zoning map and zoning to the property? The subject site is located at the intersection of Southwest Walker Road and Southwest Westfield Avenue. It is 0.21 acres in size and currently developed with a single detached dwelling. The property owners submitted a petition requesting to annex into the city in November 2024, and the city is the applicant for the proposal tonight. If Council approves the annexation, the subject site will be incorporated into the city of Beaverton. If approved, the parcel will also be withdrawn from the Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District, and Tualatin Valley Water District. The property will be added to the Central Beaverton Neighborhood Association Committee upon annexation. No right-of-way is proposed to be annexed with this proposal. The second part of tonight's proposal is to assign a Beaverton land use designation and zone to the subject site if it is annexed into the city. The proposed map amendments are non-discretionary, which means they follow a table in Beaverton's comprehensive plan that converts the county district to Beaverton land use designations and zones. The site is currently designated Washington County R5, which converts to Beaverton's lower density neighborhoods land use designation and the residential mixed C zone. This slide outlines the applicable approval criteria for the proposed annexation and the map amendments. As detailed in the staff reports that are attached to the two ordinances tonight, both the annexation and the map amendments comply with all applicable local, regional, and state approval criteria. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed annexation and comprehensive plan, land use, and zoning map amendments. This concludes staff's presentation. We are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak? No one rushing the stage. There appears to be no members of the public who want to speak on this matter, so we'll move to comments from staff. Anything you didn't already mention?
No additional comments.
All right. Okay, going to close the public hearing. The council should take up the annexation application and ordinance, and then if the annexation is approved, the council can consider the application and ordinance for the zoning and comprehensive plan map amendment. For the annexation, the council may either approve the application and adopt the proposed ordinance or take other action. If other action is proposed, the motion must include specific direction as to what the action is. If there's a motion related to the annexation, I will take it now.
I move to approve the annexation application and adopt ordinance number 4865, an ordinance annexing one parcel of land at 12870 Southwest Walker Road, withdrawing the property from the Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, the Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District, and the Tualatin Valley Water District, and adding the property to the Central Beaverton Neighborhood Association Committee, LU 01034 12870 Southwest Walker Road Annexation, ANX 2024-01031.
Second.
All right, since Kevin and Nadia were blinking in Morse code to each other, I'm guessing that second belonged to her. Is there any discussion on the motion tonight? All right, let's call the, oh, Allison, is that you? Oh, that's old. I was like, damn girl, you had 8 other times to ask questions. Okay, please call the roll.
This is for ordinance
You can if you want to.
4865, Walker Road annexation. Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
Ordinance passes 6-0.
All right, now that the annexation has been approved, the council may either approve the zoning and comprehensive plan application and adopt the proposed ordinance, or give specific direction to take other action. If there is a motion regarding the application and the ordinance, does a council member wish to comment or make a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the application CPMA 32024-01032 and ZMAX 12025-00089 and adopt the ordinance number 4866, an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan land use map and zoning map for one parcel at 12870 Southwest Walker Road, LU 32024-01034 12870 Southwest Walker Road Annexation Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Map Amendments, CPMA 32024-01032 / ZMAX 12025-00089.
I'll second.
I just make it look easy, Counselor Kimmy. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, it's the city recorder's turn.
This is for ordinance 4866, Walker Road Comprehensive Plan Map and Zone Change. Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
6 yes, 0 no.
If you would like to appeal this decision, you must appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals in accordance with LUBA rules and any applicable provision in the Beaverton Development Code. Okay. Further, we are holding a public hearing regarding Agenda Bill 25071 and 25072, which involve application numbers LU 32025-00055, ANX 2025-00052, CMPA 32025-00053, and ZMA X 32025-00054. If approved, these applications would annex property of the city assigned the residential mixed C zoning of the zoning map and assign the lower density neighborhood land use designation on the comprehensive plan map for a parcel of land abutting right of way on Southwest Birchwood Road. I now call to order the public hearing. Before we move to the substance of the hearing, I will ask the city attorney to cover some preliminary legal matters.
Thank you. The hearing will proceed as follows. After the preliminary legal matters, city staff will make a presentation, then members of the public will have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes each. Finally, there will be time for response or rebuttal to the public testimony by staff. Council members may ask questions of staff, applicants, or anyone else who testifies this evening. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. For those attending in person, please fill out the comment card at the back of the room and hand it to the city recorder at the end of the dais, and then wait for your name to be called. If you've joined the meeting online, let the city recorder know you wish to speak by using the raised hand feature. When you speak, please give your name and city of residence for the record. Now I will cover the preliminary legal matters. The applicant has the burden of proving that the applications are consistent with the Beaverton Development Code, Comprehensive Plan, and any applicable Beaverton Code provision. The criteria that must be addressed in this hearing are Beaverton Code Section 9.09, Beaverton Development Code Chapter 40.97.15.3.c, Beaverton Comprehensive Plan Sections 1.3, 1.4.3, 1.5.1, and 1.5.2, and statewide Planning Goal 10, which is housing. Any testimony that speakers present must be directed at these criteria or some other criteria that the applicant believes or that the speaker believes should apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to allow the council and parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, based on that issue. In addition, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Only those who submit written comments or give oral testimony will have standing to appeal this decision. Now, do any council members wish to declare a potential or actual of conflict of interest on this matter? Let the record show there is none. Do any council members wish to report any site visits or ex parte contacts? Let the record show there are none. Does any member of the audience wish to question the impartiality or the lack of ex parte disclosures of any council member? Let the record show there is none. Does anyone wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the council to hear this matter this evening? The record show there is none. Thank you.
All right. All right, staff presentation, please.
All right, I'm going to share the next presentation. One moment. Okay. I'm Lauren Russell with the Community Development Department, and for the next hearing, the proposal before you tonight is the annexation and annexation-related comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments associated with the 8150 Southwest Birchwood annexation project. Tonight, we will be asking council to decide on two items. Does council support annexing the subject property and abutting portions of Southwest Birchwood Road into the city? And does council support applying the proposed Beaverton land use designation and zoning to the property and abutting portions of the right-of-way? The subject site, which will be shown in blue on the maps on the next couple slides, is composed of one parcel and abutting right-of-way. It is located one lot east of the intersection of Southwest Birchwood Road and Southwest Laurelwood Avenue. The parcel is 0.4 acres in size and is currently developed with a single detached dwelling. The property owner submitted a petition requesting to annex into the city in December 2024, and the city is the applicant for the proposal tonight. If council approves the annexation, the subject site will be incorporated into the city of Beaverton. If approved, the property will also be withdrawn from the Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District. The property will be added to the West Slope Neighborhood Association Committee upon annexation. The second part of tonight's proposal is to assign a Beaverton land use designation and zone to the subject site if it is annexed into the city. The proposed comprehensive plan land use map amendment is non-discretionary for applying a land use designation to the parcel and discretionary for applying a land use designation to the abutting right-of-way. For the non-discretionary part, the designation follows a table in Beaverton's comprehensive plan that converts the county districts to Beaverton designations. The parcel is currently designated Washington County R5, which converts to Beaverton's lower density neighborhoods land use designation. The right-of-way does not currently have a Washington County district, so a discretionary process is required to determine the corresponding city land use designation. Through this discretionary process, Planning Commission voted to recommend that City Council approve the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map Amendment and apply the lower density neighborhoods land use designation to the right-of-way as well. The proposed zoning map amendment is non-discretionary, which means it follows the table in Beaverton's comprehensive plan that converts the city district to Beaverton zoning. The parcel is currently designated Washington County R5, which converts to Beaverton's residential mixed C zone. The abutting right-of-way will also be zoned residential mixed C because Beaverton Development Code Section 1035-1 states that when bordering a public right-of-way, all zoning district boundaries shall extend to the center line of the right-of-way as shown on the comprehensive plan. This slide outlines the applicable approval criteria for the proposed annexation and the map amendments. As detailed in the staff reports that are attached to the two ordinances tonight, both the annexation and the map amendments comply with all applicable local, regional, and state approval criteria. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed annexation and comprehensive plan, land use, and zoning map amendments. This concludes staff's presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, council? All right, seeing none. Is there anyone from the public waiting to speak?
We don't have anyone online. We did receive one email comment in opposition to the annexation from Susan and Steve Geisel, so that was forwarded to you because we just got it like at 4:45.
Got it. There appears to be no members of the public who want to speak on the matter. We'll move to any further comments from staff or city attorney regarding the application.
No further staff comments.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed. The council should take up the annexation application and ordinance. Then if the annexation is approved, the council can consider the application and ordinance for the zoning and comprehensive plan. For the annexation, the council may either approve the application and adopt the proposed ordinance or take other action. If other action is proposed regarding the ordinance, the motion must include specific direction as to what the other action is. Is there a motion related to the annexation application and ordinance?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the annexation application and adopt the ordinance number 4867, an ordinance annexing one parcel of land at 8150 Southwest Birchwood Road and abutting portions of Southwest Birchwood Road, withdrawing the property from the Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and the Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District, and adding the property to the West Slope Neighborhood Association Committee, LU 32025-00055, 8150 Southwest Birchwood Annexation, Annex 2025-00052.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead.
For any community members who might be watching this and a little confused by the process, I know it can be confusing. There were comments about future development potential, but that's not part of our consideration tonight. We're only discussing the annexation, and if this passes, the comprehensive plan map and zoning map changes. So infrastructure concerns, site development concerns, those will all be addressed in the future if there's a site development permit and permitting process. So we're being very focused tonight if anybody is watching and confused about that process.
I think it's funny. You think people are watching this meeting, and then those people might be confused, but thank you for clarifying. Please call the roll.
Sorry.
Oh, you want to talk? All right, go on.
Hate to be the skunk at the picnic on this one, but I came directly from a meeting and have not had a chance to see this email. And I would imagine that someone who submitted, even if it is this close to the deadline, would like the council to be able to read it. And I haven't had a chance to do that. I don't know if my fellow councilors may or have, but I would like to see if it's possible to get a printout of it.
We did not have time, I'm sorry. I can read it out loud if you would like me to act as the voice.
Please.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. Before you do that, you should reopen the hearing so that it will be in the record and then close the hearing. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, I would like to reopen the public hearing. Do we need to vote on it? I could just open it, right, as the presiding officer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so this was from Steve Geisel, G-Y-S-E-L, sent at 4:35 today. To Lauren Russell, I am a neighbor writing in opposition to the proposed Birchwood annexation. Birchwood is a narrow road with a near 90-degree curve, no sidewalks, no curb, and no gutter. This road leads up to Raleigh Park School, Raleigh Park and Swim Center, and the West Slope Library. Students walk and ride bikes on this road to get to school. Neighborhood residents walk Birchwood for exercise. Prior to the purchase of 8150 Southwest Birchwood by the developer, all the houses were occupied by families. Since the house has become a rental, there are always at least 2 vehicles parked in the street, which narrows the road and makes it more dangerous for pedestrians, bikers, and vehicles. The proposal now before the Beaverton City Council is to allow a new house to be built in front of the existing house. The plans do not provide any parking for residents of this new house, leading to even more parking on Birchwood. I believe this is a safety issue. The city of Beaverton normally requires sidewalks, curbs, and gutters on city streets. Why are these not included in development plans? Hardscaping most of the front yard could create drainage issues which have not been addressed. Has anyone who will vote on this proposal actually driven or walked by 8150 Birchwood Road to visualize what this proposal might look like? I believe that this proposal will have the unintended consequence of changing for worse the character of what is now a quiet family neighborhood and be a danger for pedestrians and bikers, both children and adults. Is the liability worth it? Thank you for your consideration, Steve and Susan Geisel.
I now close the public hearing. Do we need to redo a motion, or is the motion on the floor sufficient?
It'll be fine. It's a little bit unorthodox, everything that just happened, so it would probably be better if you restate the motion, at least it's on the floor, and then you go. But if you want to ask any questions at this point, I would do it right now before I know you did just close the public hearing, but if the council now wants to talk about the commentary that just came in, you should do that before.
Can I ask for a point of clarity? Because generally speaking, we would only ask questions of the person testifying, and they're not here, so
Sure.
Can we do that?
You can ask questions of staff if you wanted to,
Okay.
related to this, and then you would close the public hearing.
Okay. Do you have any questions for staff?
Well, there were some items mentioned in there around safety, around sidewalks. I know that most county properties, it's very common to not see sidewalks. We typically do have sidewalks built out when there's new development. Is there any comment from staff on this and what their reactions are to this feedback?
So any of the plans that have been mentioned in both this email and the testimony that was provided to Planning Commission were plans that were submitted to Washington County when there was a preliminary partition proposed on this property, but the annexation was required first, and it has since been withdrawn. So to move forward after the annexation, they will be required to come to the city of Beaverton now for that preliminary partition, and we will require frontage improvements. There might be dedication, but they'll have to meet all of our standards, and that will be done through that future application.
Do we restate the motion?
I move to approve the application CPMA 32025-00053 and CMAX 32025-00054 and adopt the ordinance number 4868, an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan land use map and zoning map for one parcel located at 8150 Southwest Birchwood Road and abutting portion of Southwest Birchwood Road, LU 32025-00055, 8150 Southwest Birchwood annexation Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Map Amendments, CPMA 32025-00053, CMAX 32025-00054.
Point of order real quick. That motion was for the zoning map amendment and the comprehensive plan land use map amendment. Should we have done the annexation first?
Yep.
Yes, and
Okay, so jump back.
So go back to the previous page. Now, people are really confused, Counselor Teeter. So we'll also restate your I'm just kidding.
Okay, that one, all right. I move to approve the annexation application and adopt ordinance number 4867, an ordinance annexing one parcel of land at 8150 Southwest Birchwood Road and abutting portion of Southwest Birchwood Road, withdrawing the property from the Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District, and adding the property to the West Slope Neighborhood Association Committee, LU 32025-00055, 8150 Southwest Birchwood Annexation, Annex 2025-00052.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right. Can we call the roll?
This vote is for ordinance 4867, an annexation related to Birchwood Road. Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
6 yes, 0 no.
All right, now that the annexation has been approved, the council may either approve the zoning and comprehensive plan application and adopt the proposed ordinance, or give specific direction to other action. Is there a motion regarding the application and the ordinance? Does a member of the council wish to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the application CPMA 32025-00053 and ZMAX 32025-00054 and adopt ordinance number 4868, an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan land use map and zoning map for one parcel located at 8150 Southwest Birchwood Road and abutting the portion of Southwest Birchwood Road, LU 32025-00055, 8150 Southwest Birchwood Annexation, Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Map Amendments, CPMA 32025-00053, CMAX 32025-00054.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? Counselor Tivnon, you sure? Okay. Will the recorder call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is for ordinance 4868, comprehensive plan amendment and zoning change for parcel of property at Birchwood Road. Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
6 yes, 0 no.
If you would like to appeal this decision, you must appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals in accordance with LUPA's rules and any applicable provision in the Beaverton Development Code. All right. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing regarding an ordinance amending Beaverton Code Section 701015 related to the definitions in the Beaverton Tax Ordinance. Before we move to the substance of the hearing, I will ask the city attorney to explain how people can participate in this hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions on tonight's agenda. For those attending in person, please fill out the comment card at the back of the room and hand it to the city recorder at the end of the dais, and then sit and wait for your name to be called. After each person's comments, council members may ask questions of the presenter. When all public comment has concluded, council members may ask the city attorney or staff any questions helpful to their decision regarding the proposed ordinance.
Is there a staff presentation?
There is. Thank you, Mayor and Councilor. I am Shannon Mason, the Events Program Manager for the City of Beaverton. Tonight, I will be talking to you about an amendment to the ordinance for the Beaverton Code Section 7.01.015 relating to the Beaverton Tax Ordinance. Next slide. The current business license ordinance in Beaverton presents a significant barrier for new entrepreneurs who seek to participate in temporary markets or special events. The current ordinance requires a business license for vendors operating just a few days a year, adding an unnecessary burden that can discourage participation and limit economic opportunity. In addition, this requirement places a heavy administrative load on event staff who must guide each vendor through the licensing process and track compliance, diverting valuable time and resources away from event planning and support. Next slide. The decision to amend the ordinance to apply to vendors operating 3 or fewer days per calendar year was based on the typical structure of special events, which usually span no more than a weekend, Friday through Sunday. Vendors participating beyond 3 days are likely engaging in multiple events and operating more like an established business. This change is intended to reduce the financial and administrative burden for individuals who are just getting started and are exploring event sales on a trial basis. Should they choose to continue participating in markets or events on a regular basis, they would then be required to obtain a business license. By making this small but meaningful adjustment to the ordinance, the City of Beaverton has an opportunity to foster a more inclusive and accessible environment for emerging entrepreneurs while also streamlining processes for city staff. This change reflects our commitment to equity, economic opportunity, and practical governance, and positions us to better support innovation, belonging, and growth in our local business community. Next slide. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Oh, Councilor Hassan.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think this comes from potentially farmers market feedback, or not farmers market, sorry, night market, because folks needed to get their licenses. Shannon, I'm just curious why 3 days, and just more to understand, because if there were different events or folks that wanted to do a couple more, and how are we monitoring that, or is that monitored?
Okay, so we did choose 3 days, as I said, because that's the typical maximum length of a special event would be Friday through Sunday, and so we would be considering that as one event. We also used 3 days because in situations like Beaverton Night Market, which happened in July and August for 1 day in each month, then it could be split over those months. As far as monitoring, for Beaverton Night Market specifically and events like my team monitors who has special event business licenses, and we make sure that everyone gets those, particularly for the Beaverton Night Market, as we're trying to help them learn the process of becoming a business. That we have found that it is more frustrating, and we have actually had vendors back out just because they get frustrated with trying to go through the process and the interpretation and translation that's often needed for some of those folks. Monitoring at other events is done through self-reporting and good faith, and it's hard to ensure the consistency of whether or not all of the folks have business licenses in the community, but that's also part of the reason that we're concerned about the equity in how this is being administered.
Thank you. So follow-up question to that. If I'm a newly emerging business, I'm just throwing an example, and there were 2 markets, do we I just want to be clear, I'm just curious about the 3 days, and I'm trying to understand, do we want to provide more flexibility for our small businesses who might be emerging? Because would we limit the ability for a business to try out with just the 3 days? But Shannon, if you could answer that first part of that question, I'd appreciate it.
So I have wondered this myself, so it is a great question. But for instance, the Legendary Makers Market last year was 3 days. So somebody could, in theory, be an emerging business that doesn't have a business license yet and wanted to do that particular event on a trial basis, and then also wanted to do the Beaverton Night Market as a trial. And that would give them 4 days total, not 3, that they would have been acting as a business within the city of Beaverton. We have to pick a number at some point. And so 3 kept it to 1 event specifically. There is the possibility to split that up over multiple events, but in most instances, the 3 will cover 1 special event, which would be your trial and foray into whether or not you want to continue trying to do business at markets.
Okay, and I think last question. This is for the business license permit. It is unrelated to serving food or other things. That is a county thing.
Thankfully, that is correct. Yes, Washington County handles like food handlers licenses and the temporary restaurant licenses and all of that sort of stuff.
Okay, and if I heard your answer correctly, a vendor could participate in Legendary and the night market, or only one?
They can do both.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Councilor Gregor.
Yeah, I have a few questions and I'll preface them with saying I think this is in general something I would support. But do we have a communications plan to let businesses know that this exists or will exist if we decide to pass it?
Not at present, but we can certainly do that. I hadn't really thought beyond how my team communicates to all of the folks that we deal with, but you're absolutely right. That should be something we look into.
Okay. I really think that's a good idea because I also, if it is a barrier right now, then if people don't know it's changed, then it will still be a barrier, right? So do we have a plan in place also to track, the events that maybe a small or temporary business goes through, or is it based on the honor system?
So my team tracks our events, but the rest is based on an honor system, to my knowledge.
Okay. And then if I remember correctly from some of the small vendors we heard about, would this affect at all the insurance requirements for events? Like if they're not required to get a city permit for the night market, for instance, would we still require them to prove insurance, or is that no longer on the table, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, we would still require them to get insurance, even if they don't have a business license.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Let me ask a question. Is this for just first time? Because some of the complaints we had from the night market were from multi-year vendors that had been there many, many times. So is this on an annual basis or for first time, and how are we going to track that?
Currently, it's on an annual basis, largely because a lot of this is based on good faith reporting from the businesses themselves. So we do have a question in the application for the Beaverton Night Market specifically that asks if they're involved in other markets or if they have been a part of the Beaverton Night Market before. But if we were to treat that differently than somebody that's doing this for the first time, it's really hard to tell if somebody is being truthful or not about whether or not they've participated in other markets. So the 3 days is meant to kind of help address that as well. So it's 3 days within a year. And so someone could potentially every year apply this, but only participate for no more than 3 days in the city of Beaverton before they would be required to get a business license.
I guess I wasn't really concerned about people and the truthfulness. I was just thinking about if this is an approach for a trial basis, how many years does it have to be a trial versus something they just do once a year? So I was thinking about Councillor Husson's questioning, and if it was for the very first time, I would be amenable to maybe considering 5 days, but I also don't think if we're going to include everyone year after year, that also doesn't feel like a good space for me. So if it was like first time business, I want to try 2 markets, make sure I got this, I'd be cool with that. But I don't want to give free license to people year after year after year for 5 days just to do events. I'm just thinking about our cost recovery. So, I mean, I'm kind of amenable to some movement here if you feel very passionate about this, or we could keep it 3 days and give it a run, and we could always adjust it if we don't like it.
Mayor, we can always check back with you, and you can put a condition on that, and then we can take it from there.
But you were asking the question, so
how
do you feel?
My follow-up was also, I just was thinking of like THPRD events. So I think 3 days is fine, but I would like to at least hear in a year or so about how this is going. I do want to say, Mayor, because there are businesses who operate outside of Beaverton, but they do their markets, and like how much are we letting them come in here and there versus having to get the license? So I just want to be thoughtful. So I think this is it's fine where it is, but I think it's good for you all to hear these questions and for us to think about these questions so that in a year or so when we hear back, then we can say, okay, this is working or this isn't working. I want to make sure we're supporting small businesses and coming here and being able to serve and participate.
Okay. Council President. Wait, did I close the hearing? I don't know where we are. No. We still have a lot of ways to go. My bad. Okay.
I think you're
Okay,
open.
I'll open the public hearing, and I never closed it, and I had to open it. Is there anyone wishing to speak on tonight's ordinance? No one is rushing the stage. I'm going to close tonight's public hearing. What's the pleasure of the council?
I move that council adopt the city ordinance embodied in the Agenda Bill 25073, an ordinance amending Beaverton Code Section 7.01.015 relating to definitions in Beaverton Tax Ordinance.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All right, will the recorder call the roll?
Yes, this is for ordinance 4869. Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
6 yes, 0 no.
All right, perfect. We're on to our first work session, 25074, Designing Walkable Places Development Code Changes. Jenny told me we had to be done by 8 altogether. I don't know if that's going to happen, but how about 8:15?
I'll take it.
Okay.
On my own, yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Sarah Leigh Hickson, and I am a planner here. And this is Brian Martin, the Long Range Planning Manager. We're back tonight to talk about the Designing Walkable Places project prior to submitting draft code to DLCD and to get direction regarding a question that came up at Planning Commission last month. We will do a brief orientation to the project, including path from here, give more details on methods to increase intensity, outline strategies to make development walkable, and request direction regarding further possible code revisions regarding building height adjacent to single-unit residential and middle housing. This project is to update code in areas outside downtown Beaverton where commercial mixed use and multiple use residential uses are allowed to make it easier for people to live in vibrant spaces where they can do more of the things that they want and need. It complements and builds on previous changes to downtown and Cooper Mountain codes and implements state rules about walkable places, as well as one of Beaverton's housing production strategies designed to increase development flexibility and capacity. The project is grant funded, and code responding to the walkable place requirements of the transportation planning rule need to go to the state next month. We will be presenting that code tonight. We're working on further refinements, including possible additions, and we'll take those to Planning Commission in June. We do not anticipate beginning hearings and potential adoption process until the fall. Tonight we have 2 questions. Do you have any questions or suggestions for the draft code? And should staff consider code revisions that add height limits to prevent the tallest possible buildings, such as 8 or 10-story buildings, abutting zones where single detached homes are allowed? A major aim of this project is to increase development flexibility and housing capacity, especially in areas with good transit access. Currently, code regulates the intensity of development using a variety of different methods, including maximum building height, maximum density, and maximum floor area ratio. The proposal is to simplify this to one primary regulating factor, floor area ratio, as it allows for the greatest flexibility for both initial development and redevelopment of a site. maximum floor area ratio is proposed to be dependent on proximity to frequent transit, that is transit that has service every 15 minutes or better for most hours of the day. The map here shows frequent transit in the form of MAX, which is shown as a red line, and bus lines, which are the wider blue lines. The dark blue areas are those currently zoned for commercial, mixed use, and multi-unit residential outside of downtown that's within half a mile of frequent transit. These areas are proposed to have a maximum floor area ratio of 6. An example of the form and bulk of a building with a floor area ratio of 6 is shown to the right of the slide. Higher intensity in these areas will allow more people to be in proximity to places they need to go and services they need to access, but also with more easy access to the transit that they can use to get to other destinations without the use of personal vehicles. The dark orange areas are further from frequent transit and are proposed to have a maximum floor area ratio of 4. The area outlined in black is Allen Boulevard. Because we know that there's an increased likelihood of gentrification in this area, special consideration was given to what the maximum floor area ratio should be. Some of this area has access to frequent transit, so following the model would have a max floor area ratio of 6. But in order to offset some of the potential pressures to remove existing buildings and affordable housing, a maximum floor area ratio of 4 is proposed unless development also includes regulated affordable housing. The light orange patches that are very small are areas where small-scale commercial development that serves existing predominantly single-unit residential development is currently allowed. The proposed floor area ratio there would be 3, reflecting the small-scale nature of envisioned development, but also allowing the development of a mix of uses on the site. So small-scale housing and small-scale commercial. Increasing development potential in areas close to frequent transit is not enough to make a community walkable. Pedestrian-oriented design principles include those you can see on the screen. This project does not fully address all of these, although it aims to hit on all of them, at least in part. But in conjunction with the Transportation System Plan update, Beaverton should be able to increase the likelihood that spaces will be walkable. The rest of this presentation will be focused on proposed changes to development code regarding the design of site and buildings to address some of these principles. The interface between public and private spaces is most obvious in the connections between sidewalks and buildings. The proposed code requires that buildings be brought closer to the street property line, and that safe and reasonably direct pedestrian paths are provided between sidewalks, buildings, and other on-site destinations. By moving parking to the side and rear of buildings, it's deprioritized for those walking and can minimize conflicts between cars and pedestrians. Bringing buildings towards the right-of-way can activate the sidewalk space, and allowing active outdoor spaces such as plazas to count towards frontage requirements can enhance the relationship between public and private.
Okay, my turn. Brian Martin, Long Range Planning Manager. This slide has a lot of colors on it, so I thought I'd take a moment to orient you on what it means. We have the existing code on the left and the proposed code on the right. And what you're seeing is looking from above at streets and lots. And the lots, it's pretend, right? The lots have different colors and labels on them based on whether they're a commercial site or a single detached home site or an apartment site. So this allows us to understand our current and proposed buffer approach. So buffers are in the code, and they're intended to address potential impacts between different kinds of uses, things like visual impact or noise. They generally include things like required space between the property line and the building, shrubs, trees, sometimes fencing. And the current code on the left focuses the buffers on zone boundaries. So you can see there's a blue dashed line there, and the green kind of blocks are indicating buffers. So that only addresses different uses next to each other in some places and not others. So the proposed approach is to look at those different uses and put the buffers between the uses and not just on the zone boundary. So you can see when there's commercial next to single detached or commercial next to apartments, it's consistently, the buffer's consistently there. Okay, next. The proposed code in your packet also has updates to our open space and landscaping requirements. There are currently code requirements regarding open space and landscaping, and it's generally based on a percentage of your site. The proposal shifts emphasis. It's kind of an update based on what was approved in downtown but modified for the rest of the city. Some of the things the proposed approach does is focuses on places to gather, which we refer to as usable open space. It allows flexibility for the requirements to be both indoors or outdoors. The usable open space is based on the amount of development. So how many housing units are there, or how much non-residential square footage is there. And then in some cases, the landscape percentage is reduced, especially for smaller lots where there's a lot less room for it. But in that case, for those small lots, other landscaping standards would still apply. Things like buffers that you just heard about, or parking lot landscaping, and requirements that anything that's not building or pavement is landscaped. So it's not zero, it's just a kind of a different angle on it.
Building design can also help activate the sidewalk and make walking, biking, and rolling more comfortable. Things such as ground floor windows enhancing pedestrian experience, and for commercial buildings allowing more vibrant shopping experiences. Prominent building entries add character, identity, and interest along a street and create a purposeful public-private transition. Weather protection, such as awnings or arcades at primary building entrances, bus stops, and above windows and other areas where people walking and rolling wait or browse, can significantly enhance the experience of those using the sidewalk. Staff recently discussed these proposed changes with Planning Commission, who were generally very supportive. However, there were some questions regarding the potential impact of removing maximum height limitations next to areas zoned for and currently developed with low-rise, low-density residential uses, such as single-family homes. Specifically, the possibility of 8 to 10-story buildings abutting single detached homes. The pink areas on this map, they're very bright pink, so hopefully you can see them even though they're small, are currently zoned to allow for single unit and middle housing development, are adjacent to lots with a potential floor area ratio of 6, and are not currently developed with multi-unit residential. Some of these lots are inside the city limits, and some of them are outside. The potential height of buildings in areas with a floor area ratio of 6 is in large part dependent on site design and development decisions, such as how much surface parking is provided. Staff's requesting council direction as to if additional code revisions should be researched to specifically prevent the tallest possible buildings in areas abutting zones where single detached homes are allowed. So to recap those two questions, do you have any questions, suggestions for the draft code? And should staff consider code revisions to add height limits to prevent the tallest possible buildings abutting where single detached homes are allowed?
Can I ask a buffering question? Are you familiar with the waste management site on 5th and Algier, right on the corner?
Not off the top of my head, Mayor, sorry.
Can you, this week, look at that and tell me how the now code would impact that? So it's backs up to one side to commercial, on the one side is housing. I think the buffering there is lackluster to begin with, and it's a real challenge for the neighborhood. So I'd like to understand, with that in mind, since it's commercial right in a downtown space, what this would look like. Councilor Teeter.
Yeah, thank you both. I've got a few questions. I'll start with one comment, just in response to the question here about buffers, Planning Commission comment there. don't want to add code revisions that would add some height limits at those buffer zones. These zones that we're talking about are meant to be some of the highest density in the city, and our floor area ratio restrictions, I think, will help regulate that and guide that. And I think staff, you've done a really good job with the buffer strategies that I think will also address some of Planning Commission's concerns when it's being put into use with different uses. So I feel very comfortable with where this is at. I think it'll give us flexibility with potential development in the future while also respecting the character of the places around it. So I feel good about where we are. Then I've got a few questions. One of them is about the floor area ratio reduction along Allen Boulevard to limit the risk of displacement. And totally want to support limiting displacement. I do wonder, is this based on data that actually restricting development is good for eliminating displacement risk, or is this more of a, I don't want to say emotional, but like a less data-based solution to displacement? Like, are we just restricting development and displacement could happen anyways, or are you getting the question that I'm asking? Like, is this the right solution?
Yeah, Counselor, it's a relatively crude tool, but the idea is that because there's a lower floor area ratio, if you think about there being existing buildings on the site and existing development on the site, the profit or that someone could get out of that new development, if you went all the way to 6, is more likely to lead to demolition and redevelopment than if it's 4. So is it exactly tuned to like exactly somebody's pro forma, like for sure? No, but we wanted to suggest it as one way to make it less likely, and you can still get up to 6 if you have regulated affordable housing. Was like, well, if we're getting affordable housing, then it's helping address the displacement and making sure affordability is there. We'd love to know if you think it's a good approach and the right solution, or we should go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad approach. Like, I understand where it's coming from. I just don't feel like I know enough to actually know if that's the solution that we need. I'm not opposed to it, so I'm not going to push really hard on that. If there are other solutions that could help, I'd be open to exploring those. Okay, 2 other questions. One was about drive-through and walk-up facilities. Drive-through facilities are incredibly pedestrian unfriendly just by their nature. Should we be looking at not allowing these as permitted uses in these zones? Is that an option, or is that going further than the goal, the scope of this project?
Absolutely an option if it is the one that you want to pick. There are options of just not having them. There are options of allowing them further away from frequent transit. There are options anywhere in between. But we tried to we hadn't talked to you about it much before, so we wanted to come to you with something that we'd love for you to modify.
And I will add just that these districts are where a lot of those existing uses are. So we didn't go all the way there without some council thoughts on that.
Okay. I'm open to having that conversation. But there's a lot of detail there that we need to dig into. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you. I think this is really good work overall.
I do want to have a future conversation about drive-through facilities, but I will tell you, when I gave birth to a second child, my desire to go through drive-throughs went significantly up, trying to get 2 kids out of a car. And when my mom was battling cancer, getting her out of the car to get into places. So we need to really have a conversation, and not through our lens of like young, active people, because there's other people in our community that need these services. So I just want to keep that in mind as we trudge down this path. Councilor Tifnon.
Thank you. I have to say, the movie Up came to mind when I'm looking at the buffers. There was also another Disney one, The Little House, or something that shows that over time as the city grows up and the house gets sadder and sadder and they finally move it out to the country. I'm in favor of the proposed buffers around the single-family dwellings that we have, especially in the areas that come to mind. I think of the house that's right down the street on Milliken. What we think of as like, that's not significant. It is to the people who live in it, and over time, the structures themselves can become significant. And I know our view of what is architecturally significant now is prescribed to now, but I would like to not think of Beaverton as a place that the history just gets erased over time, and it has been. We don't have a lot of historically significant structures because they've been demolished and replaced over time for new uses. So I think there's got to be a little bit of a careful balance here, and this idea of creating these buffers, I think, is in line with at least the perspective I have on it, so I can support that. As far as Allen Boulevard, I am very open to experimenting there on how do we keep that affordable. And I do understand from just armchair talking to folks in the development community that the higher you go, the more expensive it is, and unless it's subsidized, things are going to get pricey, and they're going to be requiring a lot more for occupants to be in it. And if that, crude as it might be at this moment, seems like it might help with the issue of gentrification, I'm all for trying that out.
Councilor Duggar.
Yeah, I think I won't belabor the point, but I think I share. It sounds like Councilor Teeter, maybe some of Councilor Tivnon's concerns around Allen Boulevard. I'd just like to see more options around preserving the affordable housing rather than just going to almost like a bonus FAR ratio that I don't know that I think that would be successful, just because I don't know what the threshold is like for regulated housing. If adding a couple stories would create the units and preserve, I just don't know that that's much of an incentive. And what I would love to see is like, before I can make any decisions on this, is like other options and maybe some like examples of where they've worked, because Allen is, it's a pretty unique district in Beaverton. We have a lot of communities of color, immigrant communities, folks like that may not have other options. And I really, I kind of echo what my colleagues have said around being really thoughtful around preserving that housing and making sure that if development happens, it's something that's not just academic, that it might happen, but we actually have concrete things in there that have proven market results to preserve at least some of that housing. So I'd like to see more options there. Thanks.
Thank you. My last comments for you. I live in a single family home that is adjacent to a 3-story building, but because of the slope, it feels like 4. I would have real reservations of wanting an 8-story building next to a single family home. And we have a road buffer in between our backyard and the 3 stories. If it was right at the fence line, that would feel unlivable to me. And so really dialing in on the hot pink areas of your map to really, from my perspective, prevent 8 stories next to a single family home would be my preference. All right, you got off pretty easy tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks for having us.
All right, last agenda item, 25075, Beaverton Climate Action Plan Update and Project.
Mayor and councilors, my name is Scott Keller, for the record. I am Senior Program Manager overseeing our sustainability program. I'm here for helping with questions at the end, and so I'm going to immediately turn it over to Kevin, who will move us through.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here. My name is Kevin Boylan. I'm the Sustainability Analyst in the city's Sustainability Program, and I'm managing the revision of the city's Climate Action Plan. I'm joined tonight by Tracy Lunsford and Maddie Cheek from Parametrics, the firm that we're working with to update the plan. As all of you know, the city's climate action plan outlines the city's climate goals and action needed to achieve them. It was first adopted by City Council in 2019 with the understanding that it would be revised after 5 years. And a lot has happened in the last 5 years, and now we're in the process of building a plan that reflects current realities and the concerns and needs of all Beaverton residents. We're here tonight to discuss that update project with you. And we have 3 items to discuss. We'll be looking at an overview of engagement to date, as well as what is planned, and we'll be reviewing 3 recent deliverables, a future conditions study and a greenhouse gas and 2 greenhouse gas emissions inventories. As we look through these items, please consider if you have any questions on the progress and direction of the project, and how any of the reports, the future conditions report or the greenhouse gas inventories, will be used moving forward. This is a recap of the project timeline. We're currently at the leading edge of the yellow section of this, and we are still anticipating having a draft version of the plan ready for you in early 2026. Engagement has been progressing, and to date, we have held several activities that are outlined here, including 7 staff workshops, as well as 3 of 6 planned workshops with implementation and community partners. The first of 2 community surveys is also currently live. We are in the process of planning some focus groups that will occur this summer. And then later in the project, there'll be 2 community town halls to receive feedback on draft actions and strategies within the plan. Throughout all of this, we've also been engaging with the city's Climate Action Task Force, and will continue to do so. At the 7 staff workshops, which were held in the thematic areas that are shown on the right-hand side of your screen, we covered BCAP implementation to date for the current plan, looked at any hurdles that staff had noticed, and identified opportunities for the revised plan. We heard a lot of feedback from staff and are expecting to hear a lot more as we continue the process. Some of the relevant themes that began to emerge are cultivating more buy-in for the plan and its goals, possibly longer-term integration into other policy documents and decision-making structures, and internal improved processes to create a stronger enabling environment for climate action to occur. Like I said, we also are halfway through our implementation and community partner workshops. We've held the first 3, which focused on adaptation, shown there on the right-hand side of your screen, and that looked at impacts of climate change and addressing them. There's 3 more scheduled that are going to be focused on mitigation, which are around reducing emissions. These workshops included implementation partners and other local stakeholders, as well as key staff whose work intersects with them. And at them, we broadly asked, what are the impacts that you're seeing, and what can the city do to help? We heard a lot, and we're planning on hearing a lot more when we have the rest of these next week. But the message so far for at least the adaptation workshops has been around acknowledgement that the impacts of climate change are already here and will continue to occur, and that these impacts are having costs and will continue to have costs, and that these new realities need to be accounted for. The full findings from engagement activities will be compiled and shared as we move further along in the project. This will include the results of a community survey, which is currently live, and we are planning a second survey for the fall when we have draft actions and strategies for the community to respond to. Along with the engagement learning, 3 recently completed deliverables will also feed into the development of draft strategies and actions in the plan. Those are shown on the screen here. They include a future conditions study, which looks at changing conditions in Beaverton and the region and local impacts. And then we also have 2 greenhouse gas emissions inventories, which will inform the plan's emissions reduction strategies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy and Maddie to dive further into these items.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors and mayor. We are first going to go over those deliverables that Kevin just told you about. The first one is the future physical conditions, which outlines the way that we expect the city to look in the future, accounting for those climate impacts that Kevin mentioned people are already seeing in taking place and happening. So to set the stage for all of this climate action planning, we analyzed the changes that we expect to see here in the city of Beaverton and in the region. And this helps us get a sense for what needs to be incorporated into current planning so that the city operations and the residents of Beaverton are prepared for the future conditions. So generally, we see some changes coming in these 4 categories, and I will go into each of them in a little bit more deep detail. Next, please. In the wet season, we're expecting to see increased intensity of precipitation, and that is mainly focused in winter storms and flooding. So while the annual precipitation will remain relatively steady, there will be less, we expect to see less rain in the dry season in the summer and more of that precipitation concentrated in winter months, which will just lead to larger storms, including snow and rain. And you can see here Beaverton Night Market, which is the topic earlier, also getting rained out. So things like this are expected to be more prevalent. Other impacts that we see could include flooding, power outages, and then disruptions to daily life like this night market. In the dry season, we expect to see more heat, and we measure that in days over 90 degrees. While we have historically had about under 10 days over 90 degrees, we're expecting that on the lowest predictions that we expect to see in the future that will go up to about 30 days. And if things don't get addressed, if we don't mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, that could be as high as 50 or 60 days a year over 90 degrees. This is starting to look a little bit like the climate of Redding, California, if you're familiar, in the Northern California region. So that's what we are predicting for the area here. Increases to heat can lead to things like fatalities in places where people don't have proper cooling, and the need to plan for changes to infrastructure, an increased need for cooling shelters, and things like that is how it will impact the city. And along with heat also comes drought, warmer and drier summers. As I mentioned, precipitation changes mean that mountain snowpack will decrease. There'll be more rain than snow, and so there will be an increased frequency and intensity of droughts. This can lead to strain on the water supply, changes to the ecosystem, and also contribute to the likelihood of wildfire in the surrounding areas and poor air quality due to the resulting smoke. And speaking of wildfire and smoke, overall Beaverton is unlikely to be directly impacted severely by wildfire since the density of the built environment within the city limits. But there are a couple vegetated areas along the eastern edge of the city near the West Hills and Forest Park that might be more in that moderate fire category. But so generally for the city, we're looking at the wildfire smoke as the biggest concern. We're already seeing those changes. These are one of the things that was mentioned in those workshops that Kevin mentioned. In the 30 years prior to 2015, we saw no days in the area that had an air quality index that was considered unhealthy for sensitive groups. And since 2015, we have averaged 3.3 days a year. So that is expected to increase. And next slide, please. One thing that we note too with all of these changes is that there are some really strong linkages to social conditions that can lead to people's outcomes in these situations. So we call these social determinants of health. And it is really the degree to which someone is able to adapt to climate hazards. And this really depends both on internal and external factors such as their age, race, gender, and genetics, pre-existing medical conditions. External factors include things like income, housing status, environmental factors, and systemic racism. So we can see that there are a lot of things that will impact individuals' abilities, and the most vulnerable will be the most highly impacted.
All right, so before we dive into the results from the emissions inventories, I wanted to cover a little bit of Climate 101 just to get everyone on the same page with why we're talking about emissions in the first place and kind of a little bit more background there. Do you mind if I? Go for it. Okay. Okay, so first is the greenhouse effect, and what this is saying, the short version, is more greenhouse gases means more trapped heat. We can think of the atmosphere like a really thin blanket that's wrapped around the Earth, and although greenhouse gases have always been in the atmosphere, and it's a very normal part of our atmosphere, we've been adding an excessive amount since the Industrial Revolution, and that is trapping a ton of heat and leading to the disruptions in natural systems that lead to the impacts that Tracy talked about. This slide here is to talk a little bit about what a metric ton even looks like. So we're talking about air molecules, right? So that's kind of challenging to visualize. And so the picture here is showing us that a metric ton of carbon dioxide is about the same size as a two-story house. So you can kind of picture a bunch of houses all stacking on one another in the atmosphere when we're talking about accumulation. This slide here is showing two graphs that are both looking at atmospheric carbon dioxide over time. So on the left, we have a really long time scale looking back 800,000 years, and we can see that yes, absolutely, carbon does kind of fluctuate over time within a range. The normal range in Earth's history has been about 150 parts per million to 300 parts per million. And then I'll draw your attention over to the graph on the right, which is showing the last 250 years and kind of capturing that impact from the Industrial Revolution and all of the burning of fossil fuels that came along with that. But you can see the line just creeping up and over that sort of normal range over 300 in the last few decades here. All right, weather versus climate. No, they are not the same thing, although we hear that sometimes they are. The key difference here is time scale. So weather, we're really talking about hours, days, weeks. I don't know about you, I wouldn't trust a forecast like multiple weeks out, but you know. So weather tells us what to wear each day, and then climate is telling us over a really long time span, what can we expect? What kind of things should we have in our closet? So just a little nugget of difference there. All right, and so now that we've got some background, I'll cover the operations greenhouse gas inventory results, and then Tracy's gonna cover the community ones afterwards. Okay, sorry, a little more background. So a greenhouse gas inventory, if you're not familiar, is a way to account for greenhouse gases. We're looking at different sources, and we're looking at kind of a set time boundary and a set boundary, whether it's a community for the community-wide one or city assets that you operate. So what is a thing doing and how much is it emitting is really the point of that. It's used to identify major emission sources, track emissions over time so we can see how we're doing, and then inform strategies to meet climate goals. So let's not focus on the small stuff, but let's focus on the big buckets that we find when we do our inventory and uncover those. And then lastly, I'll point out that this is not the first inventory that Beaverton has done. There have been 3 rounds for both operations and community in the past. We'll draw a little bit of comparison, at least for the operations one here. But yeah, this work has been ongoing for quite some time. Okay, so now to the good stuff. So this is showing the operations inventory overview. For this graphic, my eye immediately gets drawn to that far right bar, the big magenta bar, that's called supply chain. And one thing I'd like to highlight for this one is that supply chain, like a thorough analysis was brand new this year. We'll come back to why that's important in just a moment, but that is by far and away the biggest category of emissions for Beaverton's operations. The second place that my eye gets pulled to is that middle light blue bar there. That part is some really good news, which is that through purchases of renewable electricity, City of Beaverton has avoided over 3,000 metric tons, 3,000 two-story houses, crazy, of emissions going up into the atmosphere. So that is really excellent and is really good news and exciting for you all. And then lastly is fleet fuels is the largest source of local emissions. That bar also actually would have been higher by about 300 metric tons if not for the use of renewable diesel. So another area that the city is doing really well. But as you can see with the remaining 1,009 metric tons there, there's still some work to do via electrification of vehicles and additional use of renewable fuels where possible. All right, this slide is just giving a little bit of insight into how all of this breaks down by department. On the left is total emissions by department, and we can see that Public Works is a really big piece of the pie there. We're not trying to pick on Public Works, it's just that construction is a really big driver of emissions, and so that is kind of the big piece of the story there. Additionally, police and community development have decent-sized portions too. On the right is fleet emissions by department, and so like we mentioned or saw on the last slide, fleet is the largest source of local emissions or direct emissions for the city. So this is really in the sphere of influence of what the city can do. When we see the department breakdown here, police and public works lead the way, which I think makes sense since there's a lot of vehicles for those two departments. But just wanted to highlight an opportunity for fleet electrification and use of alternative fuels where possible for those two.
Can I jump in with a quick clarifying question? Sorry. When you say fleet emissions, are you talking about our fleet only, or are you talking about other?
Just the city's
municipalities?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's based on gallons of fuel used and kilowatt hours used, yeah. All right, I've got two more slides here for the operations inventory. This one is showing change over time, and it's a little bit complicated. There's kind of a twofold message here. So we'll share the good news first, which is non-supply chain emissions have decreased by about 62% from fiscal year 2008 to this current fiscal or the last fiscal year. So congratulations on a big reduction. I think that's excellent. A lot of that reduction is due to the purchase of renewable electricity that I mentioned, as well as use of renewable fleet fuels like renewable diesel, and then other things like allowing remote work and those kinds of things. So that part is fantastic. And then again, our friend, the big pink bar there, like I mentioned at the beginning, supply chain was new this year in terms of the analysis, so it's not really an apples to apples comparison to prior years. And it just really highlights that there's a large opportunity to decrease those emissions there. All right, and then lastly, on the supply chain component, so we saw the bar kind of off the charts there. It was about 88% of the city's total emissions. When you look at what is feeding into those emissions, a really large part of it is for construction. And that's mainly being driven by things like concrete, metals, steel and aluminum, and then asphalt. And so the good news with those is that there are solutions that exist, like seeking out low emissions concrete. Usually it takes more time to cure, so there's some trade-offs there. But anyway, this is just a kind of a snapshot of that. Construction and wastewater and water, you can see, are big components, which kind of informs why Public Works' piece of that pie was so large. And I think with that, I'll hand it over to Tracy.
Great, and then at this point, we're going to transition. This was all about the city's operations, and it's really important to look at the operational inventory because it's really the things that you have the most control over, both as a council and then for staff. So we also performed an inventory of the whole community, including the businesses, residents, and industry within the city of Beaverton. And that is what we're going to cover now. So the community-wide emissions were almost 2 million metric tons, so 2 million two-story houses stacked on top of the city. The local emissions are the part that are created and released within the city. Those are the blue, green, and colorful bars to the left. These include energy used in buildings, primarily natural gas and electricity, and transportation like gas and diesel to move things around. There's also a little bit of emissions from waste disposal and industrial process and product use, which is things like refrigerants and then other chemicals that are used in industry. The imported emissions are similar to the supply chain emissions that we talked about for the operations inventory. These are emissions that are created elsewhere, but they're a result of the demand for goods and services locally. You can also see a small amount on the edge there of purchased carbon offsets, and so those result in negative emissions that we take away from the overall total. For a sense of scale, city operations account for about 1% of the total community's emissions. And so looking deeper into a couple of these categories, building emissions make up almost half of the what we call the local emissions. So those are the emissions that are actually produced here locally. And this is energy used in buildings. So this is primarily electricity and natural gas. There are a couple other small sources of fuels there. But you can see the breakdown here between residential, commercial, and industrial. So this helps us identify where the opportunities for making reductions are, and homes and businesses are key opportunities for decisions that you all could make to help reduce emissions. And then the next sector that we have is the transportation emissions. Again, this is how everything moves around the city. So this is also about half of the local emissions. The great majority here is gas from passenger cars. So we can see that there are a couple other things in there. We're also including freight off-road vehicles, transit, rail, all of those things, but passenger cars are really the bulk of the emissions here. This highlights the importance of ongoing work around density, walkability, and active transportation, like the presentation that we saw just before us here. All of that stuff goes into helping people drive less to meet their needs. The next one is a little bit more detail on those imported emissions. So this is referring to the goods, services, and food that we all consume in our daily lives. And these are the emissions resulting from creating all of those things that we consume. So the top sources in goods are primarily building materials, vehicles and parts, and other manufactured goods. In food and beverage, we see the greatest emissions from meat and dairy. And then there are some emissions associated with upstream fuel production, so the production process of those fuels that we use tied to those passenger vehicles. And then some air travel as well. So all of these things together, this is a high-level summary of the future conditions of the city of Beaverton, the new realities that we expect to see here within the city, and the greenhouse gas inventory work that we've done to date to support this project. So all of these things are going to serve as a foundation for the rest of the project, and we will be working toward identifying opportunities to improve resilience toward those future conditions and also slow down the emissions that are being released as a result of activities within the city so that we don't meet the worst case scenario of those future conditions.
Just to return to the questions as we close, thank you for making it through all of that. These are the questions. Do you have any questions on the progress and direction of the project and or any of the 3 items discussed and how they'll be used to inform the strategies in the plan moving forward?
Councillor Tivnan.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions about the calculations on the slide that talks about residential versus commercial energy use. The little gray bar, does that include like wood burning fireplaces in there?
I believe that is fuel oil and propane. I don't know that wood burning is in there.
Wood burning is an interesting source of emissions because it's wood, so it's a natural, it's a biogenic source of emissions, not an anthropogenic source of emissions, meaning created by humans. And so it's difficult to account for in the greenhouse gas inventory.
Okay.
It's an important air quality issue, and it's less, so the way that we would account for it is really the cutting of the trees in the first place. But then burning them in the wood stove doesn't show up in the inventory.
Is that because they don't get trapped the same way when we talk about greenhouse?
So it goes back to there are international protocols on how to account for greenhouse gases, and so we follow those. And according to the protocols that we use, the emissions, the carbon really that gets released as carbon dioxide when you burn wood, that's in wood is a natural source. So it started as a tree, and then where we have the emissions is when we cut down that tree, so it's no longer sequestered. So it's the point where you cut down the tree that you would count the carbon, not with what you do with it afterward.
Okay. Yeah, I remember reading about where they bury the burned trees after wildfires to just keep the carbon and sequester it. Yeah, okay, so it's in that body of knowledge. Yeah. Okay, thank you. The other question, and then I have two more questions. How do you calculate air travel?
We calculate air travel based on economic models that assume a certain amount of air travel based on income ranges within the city. So we use census data, and then we extrapolate the air travel per household and assign emissions factor to that.
Okay, so there's like a plus minus, a little bit squishiness on that.
Yes, it's really important to consider that as we get into those magenta bars, when we're talking about supply chain and we're talking about imported emissions, those are all much more estimated emissions. When we're talking about our local emissions, both in the operational and the community inventory, those are much more based on usage data like gallons of gasoline that have direct direct ties to emissions. So you can imagine that that right-hand side of those graphs tend to be a lot more estimated.
Okay. And then the last question I had was going back to the original climate action plan, which I called the yellow pages because it was like a phone book directory of all sorts of ideas to combat climate change, but no rhyme or reason or order of priority or order of can we do this? How much is this? And all of that. And so looking at the timeline here, are you referring back to it? Is there a plan to rely on that? Is that the source material? Are you thinking about coming up with something new?
We think it mostly will be probably something new. We want to focus a little bit less on listing 86 actions that are not prioritized and get confusing to everyone, and more on on strategies that will help us know what we need to do. So we might talk about like electrifying transportation, and then identify kind of elements in our day-to-day work that we can do to try to accomplish that, and measurement on the strategy level, not on 86 individual actions.
Got
so
it.
that's kind of the plan. There will be some example actions in the new plan, but really focus on strategies which you don't really see in the current plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll just finish with a comment that I'm so excited about the work that you're doing and that you're starting here, and with the outreach. I cannot wait to get the next update on this, and thank you very, very much for the work you're doing.
And to that point, just noting that this is like the first of what we plan on, like really 4 quarterly updates. So we will kind of build on each one to kind of make sure that we're on the same page, or that we're carrying out the policy direction that you want us to do. So this is kind of this foundational beginning level. We'll be back in July, October, and then after the first of the year with what will maybe be the draft plan, or a draft plan for you to consider and to respond to.
All right, council, let's, we're already double the time that we allocate for these, so Councilor Husson?
Thank you. So my first question, can we jump to the supply chain purchasing slide? It has a orange 55% construction graph. Can you help me understand what does transportation services mean?
So that one, I am trying to remember. Do you recall?
I asked the same question, and I believe the answer was it was related to some sort of purchasing that of.
I was trying to remember the
department
term.
or
Yeah, there.
Some sort of transportation services that are provided.
Yes.
I can look it up.
Yeah, we'd have to look up exactly what it's called, but there was so all of the supply chain estimates here are based on spend. And so we had city expenses and we mapped them to state emissions factors for different kinds of expenses. And one of the expenses in there was in the police department for what appeared to be some kind of transportation service of some kind. So based on that, but we can dig back in and make sure we get the right name and all of that for you.
I think, like for me, some of this is really new. So as you were
Totally.
presenting, I wanted to interject multiple times, but I didn't want to. So just knowing that I'm still learning a lot of this. So thank you. Are we doing work with our intergovernmental partners like Metro or Washington County and more on the plan side and less on this presentation, or what does that look like?
We are part of a number of local government groups to kind of compare what we're all doing and trying to be on the same page and work together when we can and collaborate so that, because we realize that Beaverton alone isn't going to change the global climate. We need to work together, and to the degree that we can work together with our metro area neighbors or other jurisdictions in the state of Oregon, we are doing that.
Okay, my impact memories, there was some climate, so I wanted to make sure we're doing that. The fleet stuff, this is probably more a Jenny or policy conversation or question. Have we thought of shared fleet models for the future? So this is more of an action later, right? Like, how do we work with the district and the city and THPR to have more shared fleet to reduce? I'm already solving the problem. I'll stop. My last question is...
Add insurance and liability when you're solving this problem.
So new staff would love to take that one on. Thank you. What is the next steps? So you said you're coming back every so often. How are we bringing the community along while bringing us along? Are we bringing us along and then the community along?
Great question. We do, as we now are getting into some data collected and information gathered from workshops, we're beginning to, we will be updating kind of our, the website so that it's available there. We anticipate putting updates in upcoming year cities to kind of let them know what we've learned so that it really can be a community-owned plan. We'll take responses from the survey and share all that information back out.
Okay, thank you. Last ask, to try to help, I don't want to say dumb it down, but for I think the average person, even just trying to navigate understanding some of this, it's really awesome, and more just definitions and explanations as we bring the community along. Thank you very much.
Councilor Duggar.
Real quick, I just want to give you some feedback on I thought the two frameworks for presenting the data were exactly what I've been looking for. So government operations, right, that we have the most direct control of, and also the community. Because, reducing consumption and ultimately transportation, we know those are our biggest areas. So prioritizing electrification, sustainable transport, kind of align with our community values. I would love to see, and I think Councilor Timon said this, an ROI on actions that result from the plan. I think that's really going to help us, particularly, action X will result in potentially X changes to our greenhouse gas emissions. I do one quick question though. Total community emissions don't include local trees absorbing carbon, right? Our local carbon sinks. Is there any way we can we include that in the plan or talk about that? Because we also talk a lot about planting trees, and I would love that to be included in the impact. Not necessarily a question for tonight, because I know it's big and that wasn't included in the data, but I think it's an important part of the data and the story we're telling and the important work that we have, because we can't go to zero emissions overnight. So we need some additional carbon sinks right? So I didn't see that included, but I would love to see if we could get some data on that. Maybe it's not available, but I think that's super helpful. Thank you.
No, I was just going to say, I believe there is some additional data about trees in the actual text of the reports, which I don't think you got as an attachment yet, but you will tomorrow. And there's a section on that does talk about trees, and to Councilor Duggar's point.
I think that'd be super helpful. So I'll look forward to reading that. Thank you.
Back to the person running the meeting.
Yes, yeah. Councilor Kimmy, please. Do you have any data on the income, related to income on the emission of carbon emission?
No, go ahead. Do you mean for residents?
Yeah.
We have data sources that connect income levels through census data to emissions based on their income level. So that's one of the data sources that we take into account.
But the reason that I'm asking is because we were asked questions about getting rid of some, landscaping equipment, gas emission, whatever, but then it directly impacts the people who's using it and the job. So when we make policies, we have to consider the residents and why they're using what they're using. Many of the people who work in the low income level, they have trucks, they have to work manual labor and a bunch of other jobs. So it impacts different people at different categories. So when you're in the implementation stage, we have to consider all that part of it, not just strictly by the carbon emission. And another question is, we're going toward AI and implementation of technology, but then we also know how much energy that it requires. So by going green, we might be contributing more in global emission of toxicity. So I like to be more aware of that if possible. That doesn't mean that we're not going to go technology, but how is that going to impact in a sense that I want to be aware of it. And then fleet-wise, number one contributor is police vehicles and our public works. So a lot of countries are going hydrogen for energy source. Is that something that you think we should consider for the future? And nuclear, obviously, because it doesn't emit as much as greenhouse gas. I'm just going far ahead maybe, but I don't know if you could answer that. Because a lot of countries are actually going hydrogen because of it.
For the sake of time, I think we're considering a very broad range of potential actions. And so all of the things that you've mentioned are things that we do have in consideration. Okay. So we'll have more information as the project develops.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I've got a question on slide 25 related to operations, greenhouse gas inventory change over time. Yeah, right there. Yep. Yes. So the buildings and facilities line and the streetlights and traffic signals, streetlights completely went away. Buildings and facilities almost did. Is that due to the construction of the new police station, or what is the cause for us to be doing so well in each of those categories?
Yes, it does look a little wild, doesn't it? So that is in large part because the city purchases through PGE fully renewable electricity. And so the remaining building emissions there are all from natural gas usage. And so the whole electricity component just shrunk, and since streetlights also run on that, those went away as well.
Ah, interesting, thank you.
Yes.
Two more comments. Are we doing anything to study like stored carbon in buildings? Councilor Duggar mentioned carbon and tree capture, but Councilor Tivnon mentioned earlier preservation of his older buildings. Demolition is a big cause of greenhouse gas emissions. Is that included here in a construction category, like demolition and construction, or a stored carbon inventory in general? Like, how's this tie in?
This operations inventory is just all based on expenses for new stuff. So that piece does not include the demolition component. That said, that's something that could certainly be considered as a strategy to address those emissions in the future in terms of material recovery and things like that.
Okay, thanks. And then my last question, we focused a lot on greenhouse gases in this presentation, but there's a lot of other types of pollution. I'm thinking of noise pollution, light pollution, things like that that have a climate impact as well. Is the climate action plan only going to be focused on greenhouse gas emissions, or are we going to look at these other impacts that we have as a community too?
You want me to take that?
Sure.
Okay. So typically when we look at all of these things, we look not only at emissions reduction, but also co-benefits. And so when we talk about that, we can look at things like improved public health. Let's see, what are some other ones I'm blanking out?
We can also look at other air pollution and various topics. So that's where we would address it. But that would not be the primary driver for it to appear in the climate action plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to future updates.
Thank you.
All right, our last agenda item of the evening, any council new business? All right, meeting adjourned.
Recording.